to Moving with Life. This is episode number 16. I am Andy Acosta. My friend Eddie Sines will be joining me today. Listeners, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for lending us your ears for the next hour and a half. Don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to leave reviews. We are on iTunes, Stitcher, and SoundCloud. So episode number 16, me and Eddie get straight into the conversation, and for me, it really revolved around my abnormal week. We talk about our week and how it went, and then we talk a little bit about politics, but the majority of this episode revolves around religion, which we hadn't quite gone in depth as far as maybe our points of view. And not that we give a stern point of view, but we just give our thoughts about religion and how it ties into ourselves and as well as the world. The book I used to template this episode is called The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell with Bill Moyers, and that book was written back in the 80s, I believe, the late 80s, and it circles and parallels religion and the world. And for me, it's still so relevant in today's world and what we're going through, what we're seeing happen. So we revolve around that, and I feel it was long overdue. So without further ado, here is Moving with Life.
God, that's still that dry little whatever.
Little child's cough.
Mm-hmm. Are we rolling right now?
Just a little bit. Yeah.
Just a little bit. Cool. Taking my keys off before they make some kind of extraneous noises.
Man, I have to say, and I've been thinking about this all day because I wasn't sure if it was just gonna be me and you or if Brian was gonna be able to come or not. Because he had already told me since like earlier in the week, he's like, "Hey man," because the thing is like, well, he has a brother and sister, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they all have jobs. His brother's finishing up school, so he has his job and school. His sister's a nurse, so like their schedules just don't mesh.
They
Rarely.
probably never see each other.
Exactly. So with that in mind, he's like, "Hey man," and last week was his birthday. Last Monday was his birthday. So I know they had like dinner, but that was it, I believe. And so he told me, I guess earlier this week, he said, "Hey man, like I guess I was the one who probably brought because I was trying to just figure out what I was gonna do because I know, well we had the gigs and then I had my cousin. The thing is, his communion is coming up, so like we're trying to get all that stuff just solidified, make sure it's all taken care of." So that was that, and then so I text him like, "Hey man, what are you gonna do?" And he's like, "Well, I might be with my brother and sister." I'm like, "Okay," and now we're here, so that was that. But yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean that like I see my cousin every 2 weeks, but that's planned. That's heavily that's schedulized. That's heavily automated. Compared to like something like him where he lives with these people and he don't see them as often.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I'm super used to seeing my brother like most of the time, right? Because we both live at home.
Right.
But now I'm gonna have to sooner than later start getting acclimated to him not being there, and that I know for me it's gonna be hard. It's gonna suck because I love having him there.
That's true. He's leaving. I mean,
he's
in
leaving.
the
He's
fall,
going to college.
In the fall, right?
Yeah.
He's not gonna stay home. He's going to go out. He's going to A&M,
Mm-hmm.
College Station.
College Station.
Freaking A. Yeah, I know.
Fighting Aggies.
I have not forgotten about getting him on here. It's just honestly, since I've been planning to get him on here, we've gone to the island, and then we've gone to Houston, and then we've had backwoods. It seems like we're at backwoods every other week. It just feels like that,
Almost to the point, yeah.
And now we've added Falfurrias, which we had that mishap yesterday.
Maybe
Fine.
that's why it feels like that.
Right, exactly. And it's literally been like 2 months in the making, for me at least, that I've been developing notes. I actually now bought the movie Interstellar so I can make notes.
Oh, thank God.
So like I'm developing this, but it's taking 2 months because it's like, oh, we have a gig. It's like, oh, I'm Sunday we're just beat. And lately we've been recording odd days, like whatever. And then today Brian's on here, and when your brother's on here, I really want to make it a point to get us. It'll be 4 of us. I don't want it to be the 3 of us. When we get your brother, because I feel like that conversation can go very many ways, and if we have like a bunch set of questions, it would be great.
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways, yeah, going back to the root of, seeing siblings and whatnot. I mean, I don't have any siblings. I have my cousin. That's the closest thing I have. But like I said, it's heavily automated in my schedule. I know I'm going to see them for 2 days every 14 days, and that's it. I don't get any more. I don't get any less.
Mm-hmm. Relationships. Just like and I don't mean like special like
Yeah.
interest people. I
Okay,
mean like
okay,
just
yeah.
like in general,
Right? That human,
the human need for
the
it. Yeah.
societal need
You know what other
for an
human?
individual
Yeah.
person.
You know what other human need I was noticing today
Go ahead.
was the one to where when you see something that has wheels, you want to ride it. That's the human need.
Really?
Or like
What's
not
it?
a need, but it's like no, not intuition either. I was gonna say intuition, but no, it's not it. I don't know. It's just like a desire, like an urge. Like as going around town with my mom today, we went to a whole bunch of places, and one of them was Bed Bath and Beyond, and they had some kind of sharper image scooter thing or whatever, like a two-wheel motorized contraption.
Okay.
And I was just like, oh man, I want to get on it. What is it? I want to get on it. It has wheels. I want to get on it. And like something about like when you see someone with wheels, you just want to get on it. I don't know.
That's interesting. It's if that's the case, if that is, let's say that's 100% true, right? Last night my parents were watching this old western movie, and this guy was gonna get hung right in front of the community, and of course the majority is male. Like this is back in like the late 1800s, 1900s, like back in the day, back in the real western days, I guess you could say. So my mom was like, "How can they just sit there and stand there and watch?" I'm like, "Why are you sitting there and watch it? It's the same thing." I'm like, and I mean that in a very neutral, unrude way because that's the human element. I'm like, Mom, that's what I mean when I say like there's a lot of humanistic things that you want without even knowing you want it. You hate death, but yet you watch it on TV. They saw it in person, and that happened like so much. Shawshank Redemption, The Green Mile. Like all those movies where they showed, and I think was The Green Mile based on true events,
I have no clue.
or was it? Maybe it was on a book. Either way, let's assume like there's a mixture of both. Let's assume it was inspired by truth, right?
Okay.
Even something like that. Watching them get electrocuted. And the community's coming into the chamber and watching this electrocution go on.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts. I feel like we've talked about this before with the tiger that mauled the dude
Yes,
in the Chinese zoo.
Yes, yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Same idea. And I know I went off on that. we went off. That was probably the deepest end we've gone off so far, and I've tried to retract so that we can continue and not feel like obligated to go any which direction. If we fall into that little hole, that we've been able to mitigate and just be better about talking about it, understanding that it's part of the human life, human interaction, and then moving past it.
Yeah.
Not and I don't want to say we even dwell on it, but it's enriching in a negative way. Does that make sense? Like like it just impacts you. It's like, man, like these are human. We've gone over this, but it's like it's the human. The humanistic aspect. No, what's the word? There's a better way to say it. Like
There's just some strange attraction for people when it comes to watching others suffer or die or something.
Yeah,
it's
when death is involved. Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. When death is involved, that attraction, that chemical change in your brain that happens every single time.
I still have trouble explaining it. Like I still haven't really dialed in on why that's attractive. I'm sure someone has a biological answer for me somewhere, but I haven't really searched for it.
And also, excuse me, I don't know if it's necessarily called primal, but it's part of that. It's just
I would imagine it is.
Quote unquote, Lion King circle of life type deal. It's kind of like there, like. Fine, it's a kids movie, but there were still hyenas. Like.
Would it be the same thing? Like we won't I guess get into it too much, but would it be the same thing as when people like watching UFC? Because I mean, what are you really doing when you're watching UFC or MMA or whatever? You're watching two guys like beat each other up. What the goal is to kill each other, but they're not going to kill each other, right?
Yeah.
They're going to go to the point where in normal life, where there's no stoppage, that you would like in defense of your own life, right?
Yeah.
But that's really the whole point of that is to knock someone out, to the point where, like, if you were to keep going, you could kill them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can definitely just dismantle somebody if you just fucking. And that's why you have weight classes, because to make sure that doesn't happen either. You're not gonna have a 250-pound guy just go against even a 200-pound guy. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that stuff, man. It's so interesting. And man, I like that we're getting, I guess, this kind of deep early, because that's how I've kind of felt this whole week, for whatever reason. And I say for whatever reason, because it seemed like it's grown up to Thursday. And Thursday, I had lunch with my dad, and I was saying, hey, what's up? He's like, what are you up to? I'm like, I'm just kind of chilling. The podcast is up, the vlog is up, whatever. And he's like, you need to slow down, son. I was like, I rarely, if ever, rebuttal to my dad. And I said, but I enjoy doing what I'm doing, like, and he's like, yeah, but you need to slow down. And I'm like, but then after he repeated, I'm like, okay, you're right. And since then, and this is what I was gonna originally start with, was like, I want to apologize to you and like just to whoever I've interacted with, because my brain has not been just centralized on the day-to-day stuff that I want, that I sometimes maybe I preach it and I really try to do it, and it affected me ultimately on Friday, because even my workout was shitty. Like, it was just bad. Like, I had a bad workout, and I went to your place. I'm like, man, I had a bad workout. It just wasn't good. And then we got to the gig, and I was there, and it took me forever just to get in sync, for me to get in sync.
To be there.
For me to get in sync with myself, to then perform. I mean, my brain still fights it, but if I know that I'm not in sync, then I assume that it's also portrayable, or it's you're able to see it watching me.
Sure.
You're able to see it. So that was that, and then well, we talk. I don't want to go into too much detail about it, but the situation that happened at the school district that your friend works at, my cousin goes to.
Yes.
With that student, and that happened, I think, Wednesday or something, and my cousin, he Snapchatted about it, and I texted him. He didn't text me till the next day, and he let me know the situation, and so that, I guess, that was another stem of like where my week just ended up. And then, like, even yesterday, dude, like, we after I left your house, my dad's like, hey, let's go to the baseball game. So we went, and like, I wasn't like into my clock, but I was like, oh, it's 8:00. We'd be sound checking right now, or we'd be loading in. Oh, the game ended at 9:30. Oh man, we'd still be waiting for the first set. Like, and he's like, but you're here. I'm like, you're right, but I don't know why my brain is doing this shit, and it pisses me off, not in a physical way, but in my brain, like knowing that my brain is not where it should be.
That's funny. So, like, your brain was just kind of automatically wired because maybe, like, of the day or the time or something. Like, it was ready to go. It was prepared.
Right.
And that's kind of how mine was, too, on Saturday, in the same sense. Like, when I was explaining to somebody, it's like, you're the 7 stages of having a gig canceled on you. It's like, 1, go. 1, fuck the world and everything in it. And then, like, 2, how am I going to pay bills this week? 3, what bills do I have to pay this week? 4, how much money can I survive on this week? And then,
bare minimum,
and then 5, well, I guess I'll just get some rest and look forward to that. And then 6, no, but I really want to play. 7, nah, I'm just really looking forward to getting some rest.
Yeah, right.
7
and
stages.
That's actually very good. I like that, man. Because for me, it was just like, okay, I know I have my, because we pay for jiu-jitsu, right? So I know I have that coming up at the beginning of the month. But it's like, for me, one thing that I remember was like, oh man, I have my 3-day fast coming up, so that's 3 days of food I don't have to worry about.
There you go. That's easy for you.
It tied in too well, dude. It tied in too well, because that's why I'm laughing about it. I'm glad you're laughing about it, because it literally, I'm like, wait a minute, 3 days with no food? Heck yeah, like, I don't have to worry about
God
it for 3
bless.
days. Just water. I can get water. I'm
Yeah.
good with water.
So, well, I guess for everyone listening, we were supposed to play in Falfurrias. If we have any friends in Falfurrias that were planning on coming to see us, Pioneer Saloon, we're really sorry it got canceled. It was a last-minute thing, not our decision. It was management's decision. I guess there's too much going on around the area. They didn't feel like it'd be a good night to have the bar open.
Yeah, especially for Freer. I know that Radisson Roundup is a big deal.
Yeah, I've heard that.
And Saturday night, last night, well, it was Buck Days also. I guess this weekend was this week, because Buck Days in Corpus, it's like a big day. It's like the Mercedes Livestock Show.
Yeah.
Of Corpus, and
Okay.
I got to go when I was living over there, so it's a big event. And the thing is, over there they have the arena, so they have the rodeo indoors, like it's an indoor arena, like it's a big thing. Yeah, it's really cool. It's really neat. Well, last night headliner was William Clark Green, so like, I mean, they were gonna get pulled over there, but I feel like for Foul, Freer would be the bigger go-to, 'cause it's closer. I feel,
Probably.
and maybe unless you're in the rodeo, then you'd go to Corpus. You can do that.
I wouldn't even doubt that some people from Falfurrias came down to see Aaron Watson, being that it's only an hour away.
Yeah, it's easy. I mean, it's as easy as going over there and playing gig. It's the same thing.
So speaking of, I went and hung out with my lady friend at the concert. At the Aaron Watson concert last night. And well, like you were saying, that's what I was gonna tag on with a little while ago. It was like my brain was still in the musical mindset of things. And so, well, you know how, like, I am, and I know how you are, and, like, and Gonzo and everybody else that we play music with. Like, when we're at a concert, we're in a very particular mindset, in a very analytical mindset. Mm-hmm. And while everyone around me was enjoying the concert and dancing and singing and drinking and having a good time, I'm there like scratching my beard, like my chin, and just in thought, like, the lighting guy, he missed that cue. What's going on? Like, that was a moment, man. Like, the band like had a big hit, like I forget what song it is. I think it's called Isabel or Isabella, or it was one of his newer ones off that new
okay.
album, Vaquero.
Yeah, okay. I have no.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just going off
Fair.
of what I think he was saying.
Yeah.
And so it kind of starts out like just a guitar thing. It's like a Spanish guitar kind of rhythm going on.
Okay.
And then, there's a big hit going into like the next verse or whatever. It's just kind of how the song starts. And there's a cool moment for like a big lighting thing that could have happened and it didn't happen. And it really bothered me. I was like, why didn't you do something with the lights there? It would have been really cool. But, little things like that is the mindset that I constantly find myself in at concerts. So I kind of had to dial back from that, and I had to go back and be with the people around me and make sure I wasn't ignoring my lady friend or
right.
or
Yeah,
her friends.
absolutely. And that was the thing. And that's the thing. Like even when I was at the game, like I was enjoying the game. Me and my dad got to talk about baseball, which we hadn't done in a while. Even living at home, you live at home too. It's like, man, like I mean, it's not like we see our. I mean, I feel this is pure opinion, but where people will say, "Oh, you live at home with your parents." Dude, like, yeah, but it doesn't mean I see them. I'm still trying to do stuff. They still work. It's not like they're not working, It'd be different if, let's say, they're a stay-at-home parent, whatever. That'd be different, totally different case. But for them, I feel like for the majority of maybe millennials, for the majority, our parents are still working. Like, what the hell, like, our parents aren't old for old sake,
Yeah.
Like, I mean, our parents are still working. Now that we're coming of age, I guess, and I guess for the older millennials, because I think the millennial range is like from 24, 25 until about 40. So let's say our parent, like my parent, I think my parents had me when they were like 26, 27. So they're in their like early 50s. It's like, yeah, like people are working till they're 80 now. Like, I have an aunt that still works at HEB here in Edinburgh, one of the HEBs, and she's like 82. Like she's a greeter, like yeah, but she's still working. She still gets her W-2. She's still working. That's the point. My point is that she's still working.
Yeah. I did an interview at the Monitor Thursday morning, and one of the last questions I was asked in the interview was, like what's like in store for the future? Like how long do you want to keep doing this and whatever? And I was just kind of like, forever. Like, like until the day I die. Like Willie Nelson's still doing it. He just turned 84, I think.
Yeah, 84. Yeah.
And Bob Dylan's still doing it, even though people have kind of forgotten about Bob Dylan, but he's still doing it.
Yeah, he's still doing it.
Like no excuses.
Yeah.
I just want to keep doing
Absolutely.
it. Why? I don't hate it.
Right.
I'm not
yeah,
trying to get away from it.
Right. Yeah. Same here, man. And this is also another point that I've been pondering today, because, like, for me, music is such a selfish thing for myself, not for anybody else. But I'm saying, like, for me to play music, it's such a selfish thing because I get to do exactly what I want to do. Every chance I can. Every chance we get a gig, whatever. I've been getting less out of. I guess, we're not with you. Like, I guess sit-in calls, which is like. Lately has been great. Like I think this year I've gotten 0, which like I've in turn just been able to use it to just relax. Like trying to. But see, with those are planned. Where like yesterday would be different. Where it wasn't planned. So your mindset was kind of building up, and I got my work. Yesterday's workout was better, so I felt better. I was like, man, like
good.
I just felt better. It's like, man, I might have just needed a rest too. Friday,
Yeah.
My body, because I still did like 20 minutes of work, but it was not a workout. I do not consider it a workout. Yesterday I went back and my friend was like, "Hey man, you ready today?" I'm like, I'm freaking ready. Like I'm good to go. So I had a better workout. But it's that. I guess it's part of my pre-show ritual type deal. It's maybe similar to that type of idea, where, kind of just get my day started. Kind of sleep in a little bit. Get a workout in, get a sweat on, get a good lunch, start getting ready, and then you happen to text me at a great. Optimal time, not a great time, just an optimal time of like what I was doing. I was getting ready to transition my mindset officially, and then you text me and I'm like, okay, I don't have to go through that transition. Not that it didn't bother me, but it's like, well, we gotta roll. No, you gotta roll with it, man.
Yeah.
At that point, there's nothing you can do. And one thing that I'm gonna ponder that I wanted to bring up to you, I was gonna say it personally, but it don't really matter. Is like we can start looking for those things. When we book a venue like in Corpus or whatever. Like for Corpus, if we would have played, let's say we would have played Ingleside, it would have been optimal to play this weekend. Where Falfurdes is right in the middle, so it's not optimal. So like, hey, we're not gonna have people in
Good
town.
point.
So like we can start looking for like, okay, we're gonna be in Fal this weekend. Is there anything going on within the vicinity? Within 150 miles. That will contradict. Like, hey man, can we switch the week? Can we let's just skip that middle conversation, that last minute text, that you get.
Yeah.
Like, oh, damn, we could have mitigated this, but it's something that didn't happen before. And this is right. We've gonna get canceled, but it wasn't because of other events. So with that thought process, that's what I was gonna tell you. It's like, man, we can at least write that down and have that as a consideration whenever we're booking gigs. We can go from there.
I like it. I'm glad you brought that up. That's not something I thought of yet. So.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, what brings me to that mindset is like, okay, if it doesn't make sense, why? And like, it's like, man, it doesn't make sense. Like, we have a gig and whatever, but the variable is, anticipating something like that because it's new. Then you write it down as a new thing, and then you consider it for next time, for stuff like that.
Well, it made sense to me why he wanted to cancel it.
Right.
I can't necessarily hold that against him because he owns and operates a business, and I completely understand that. And you got to do what you got to do. But the common courtesy would be 2 weeks' notice, and there could have been a little more responsibility taken.
And I agree with 2 weeks, and that's because I always tell you, like, if we can get 7 days, that's manageable. We can at least just put it off take it off the calendar, and we'll be good. But yeah, 2 weeks optimal. 7 days is like okay. It's not bad. It's not terrible. And because even 7 days, that'll allow Denver to get another gig if he needs to, or whatever. And I can then plan my week more accordingly, whatever. Because I'm just trying to fill up my time. My any empty space, quote unquote. I'll try to fill that up. But
for sure,
yeah, man. So good.
Well, either way, as through my 7 phases of losing a gig or a gig getting canceled, number 7 was I'm really looking forward to rest, and that's not what I did at all. Not in the slightest. And I'm so exhausted.
Did you do anything after the concert, or are you just kind of like...
Yeah, we went out to Draft House.
Oh, okay.
But I don't know. Everyone was, I don't know. People got in such a strange mood after the concert, like just in general. I don't know what it was about last night. There was some bad juju going around. But there were a lot of people in a lot of weird moods.
You think that's interesting? And first thing that I think about is like a complacent mindset when you're not getting those chemicals thrown at your brain. Like you go to the concert, you enjoy it, and then you leave, and it just kind of like you go back to zero, and maybe the high doesn't last as long.
Maybe
I don't know. These are just questions. This is something I'm just pondering just now. You saying that, it's like, man, would it possibly be because like the high doesn't last? Like that short attention span. Like it kind of relevant to that, where you get that high and then it just doesn't seem maybe to last as long.
I wonder if it had anything to do too with we went to Draft House. A lot of people go to Hillbillies after country concerts. Naturally, I'm assuming not that I wasn't there, but I'm gonna go ahead and say it's safe to assume that Hillbillies was packed.
John Wolf showed up, so
I heard.
So
so I'm assuming it was packed as shit, and which is awesome. But we went to Draft House, and it was kind of dead, to be honest. Like it's usually popping.
I went Friday night, and it was dead as hell. Like it was super dead on Friday too. It was
Interesting.
Weird. Yeah, super weird. Like, parking lot empty dead, like, weird.
Ugh.
Yeah, like, really bad. Bad in the sense of business is, like, not good. Yeah, it was not optimal.
Yeah, it was pretty dead last night, too, and I wonder if that had anything to do with, like, vibe coming down. And then we were sitting outside, and then, like, it got really windy, and shit's blowing around everywhere.
Yeah.
A couple people,
cool
a couple people were a little too drunk to function, had to go home. So it's one of those nights. I don't know, it ended up being I don't know, people got in weird moods.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, since we're on weird moods, let me read this little piece because I was trying to figure out material for today, and because of my mindset, because of what I've already been thinking about with like my dad saying you need to slow down, then my Friday being kind of lopsided, then Saturday being its own thing because there was no gig. I was like, man, usually when it's me and Eddie, usually I go straight to Extreme Ownership, just kind of I would have normally done a chapter review, but because my heart is not in that state right now, it's like it wouldn't make sense to force myself or force any of us to like listen to this. If I'm not into it, how can I ask anybody else to do it? So
yeah,
gotta
say what you mean and mean what you say.
Right, and taking that seriously, it's like, okay, like what book do I can I at least derive from? And then because my dad said slow down, and then I guess the mind just the way the mind works. And what me and you have briefly kind of just brought up as far as like because we've been talking about religion more or less like in and out like these past rehearsals and just whenever we have time we've dove into it these past few weeks. So I was like, Power of Myth. I think that's the book for today. And I've said this. I don't think I've said this on the podcast maybe, but I know I told Eddie this where it's like it's super dense. It took me 3 months to finish this book one time. And right now like I'm only 21 pages in, and it's not a long book, but it's just so. I've already been at it like a month, and like I'm still at page 21, more because it's also not my priority book. When I read it the first time, it was like the book, and that was it.
And even then, you said it took you 3 months.
3 months for one. Yeah, that was my sole book. It took me from when we left Nashville, that day we left Nashville, and 3 months after that, so August,
Jeez.
September. And I did say this in my vlog for today, which you won't see till tomorrow. And this podcast you won't hear till Thursday, so the timeline's going to be all fucked. But I did say on the podcast, there are some days on this book where I'd read 2 quotes, because it's a conversation. So I read one from Joseph Campbell, the author, and then Bill Moyers, basically the mediator. And I'd read like one piece from each of them, and I'm like, I just closed the book because it's like, oh my god,
Too much.
Yes, it was plenty. It was plenty to need to digest. That took 24 hours, to the next day.
All right, pull up your pants, kids. Here we go.
All right. So here, this is in the beginning. This is chapter 1, which is called or titled, "Myth and the Modern World." Basically, how and one thing I've told Eddie about this in the beginning, because I believe this book was written like around 1988, or it was at least released 1988. Yes, it was copyright 1988. And it's so relevant 20 years later. And it blows my mind to this day, because even though I haven't read through it in a little bit less than a year, like some of the things in here, like I just know that it's mind blowing, and it's crazy how 20 years later it's still relevant. This Joseph Campbell was onto something. Like he understood the times, and now me reading it, it's like, oh my god. And I told Eddie this when I was reading this for the first time. I'm like, dude, what the hell? Like this is, we're in 2016, now 2017, and this book was written in 1988 that was 3 years before I was born. Like that was not long ago, because it's during our time lapse.
It's about a generation and a half ago or so.
Just about. And it's like, gee, 1988 was like the meat of millennials. The real, like, I guess what millennials are actually defined as, not what we thought it was. Because I think we've talked about this, where like, millennials actually range from like born late 70s up until 1991 through 1993, more or less. So that you figure about 24, 25 up until about 40. And funny thing is, I've talked to some more 35 to 40s, especially substituting stuff, and they're like, what? Like when I brought this stuff up to them, and I'm like, yeah, you're like my big brother, you just keep bullying us. like you just keep bullying, because we're the next decade. Now, I get the decade thing, but that's different from a generation. And the way a lot of people are doing, like even from some of these research companies, research labs, they're bringing up, that, and if you put the age rate, it's like 40, and it's like, man, like, yeah. And even my cousin Luis, he's like, hey, man, I showed him the Simon Sinek video, the one that started off that whole millennial thought process for us. I showed it to him today, and he's like, so what are millennials? And I gave him the age range. He's like, what about me? I'm like, dude, you're like the next generation, bro. Like
Generation Z.
Yeah, I'm like, you're Gen Z, and see this video? Like, it's going to say Gen Z next. In 10 years, it's going to say Gen Z. Like, in 10 years, it'll be because he's exactly 10 years younger than me. So I'm like, in 10 years, it's going to be a millennial talking about Gen Z, and I'm going to say, shut the fuck up. Help them, teach them, and, go that route. Don't go the route of, go the route of Simon Sinek. Don't go the route of what we're getting right now as millennials.
Yeah. Don't go the blame route.
Yeah, the blame. Oh, it's their fault or whatever. That's not the way to go. Anyways, so this book is the intro. The first chapter is just saying how you're losing myth, and in this book, myth is religion, but all religions, not just Christianity, not just one specific one. And that's why I liked it. That's why it's helped me. And I've never had a judgmental self, but I just didn't have any fact or any type of opinion on religions outside Christianity, Catholicism, because I'm a Catholic. Like that's it, right? And with this one, now that I talked to my mom about this, and for her it's different because she's a different generation, born in a more strict Catholic home, right? So for her to break that show, it's taken me a year, But I'm not doing, and I tell her, I'm like, I'm not doing this like in a bad way. I just want you to understand that the world, there's actually a lot of good people and a lot of parallels in the world and between multiple religions, and I think that's great, and that's what I want to focus on. Not the radical Islams or jihad, all those like radical like just thought processes, right? And so anyways, so that's what the power myth is. Chapter 1, it's basically just the introduction to that. Here, Moyers, which is the mediator, he says, the poet Yeats felt we were living in the last of a great Christian cycle. His poem, The Second Coming, says, turning and turning in the widening gyre, The falcon cannot hear the falconer. Things fall apart, the center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosed upon the world. The blood-dimmed tide is loosed, and everywhere. The ceremony of innocence is drowned. And then now he says, what do you see slouching towards Bethlehem to be born? And Joseph Campbell's response was, I don't know what's coming any more than needs new. But when you come to the end of one time and the beginning of a new one, it's a period of tremendous pain and turmoil. The threat we feel, and everybody feels. Well, there is this notion of Armageddon coming, you know? So I was going through this book and I read that piece. It's like we're right in the middle of that. And I don't see Armageddon. I think it's just a time and space, right? It's just the time that we're going through. It happened over and over again. And we're just happen to be in the crossroads of this technological movement and this crossroads of religions. I mean, starting from the, after 9/11, learning about Islam. Like, I think people before were maybe, you've mentioned this, Eddie, where, we're kind of in this bubble, and there's bubbles in the bubbles, right? So the bubble of the U.S. more or less was just Christianity. And after 9/11, then Muslims. Then Muslim became the talk, and Islam, and all these other religions, right? So, again, repeat, is that this book was written 20 years ago, and it's we're right in the middle of it again.
Arguably so, definitely. Even in another realm, like I think politically, I mean, I've only been alive as long as I've been alive. I don't know what it's been like.
Right, yeah.
Divisiveness, in the country. I don't know what the divisiveness has been like in the past because I can't speak from that experience. But it definitely feels like in my lifetime, it's the most politically divided I've ever seen it be, as far as when I started paying attention anyway. But sorry, guys, I'm sick.
Been sick for like 2 weeks.
I've been having this like dry little pouty kid cough and just can't get over it. Anyway, continue reading.
Yeah. Well, man. Okay, I'll just continue reading. So Moyers then says, he's quoting this. I have become death, the destroyer of worlds. Oppenheimer said when he saw the first atomic bomb explode. But don't you think but you don't think that will be our end, do you? Campbell replies, it won't be the end. Maybe it will be the end of life on this planet, but that is not the end of the universe. It is just a bungled explosion in terms of all the explosions that are going on in all the suns of the universe. The universe is a bunch of exploding atomic furnaces like our sun, with the typo in there. So this is just a little imitation of the whole big job.
That's nuts. I've never thought about the atomic bomb in that sense, but that's accurate.
Imagine, yeah, dude, and that's why when I read this, I literally, because usually even when I read out of a book, when I've done extreme ownership, I literally plan, okay, we're gonna say this, I want to read this, and when I read this, I literally stopped. I'm like, I'm just gonna go, and I hope that me and Eddie can have a good conversation over it, because like there's points like that, and okay, like last year. Okay, let me start. So reading this book initially helped just skyrocket reading everything else. Reading this allowed me to read 8 more books before the year ended because the other ones were such easy reads compared to this book. So reading that last year, Sons of Suns, Atomic Bombs, it's like, oh, and this was before, I think this is like leading to where we started talking about the universe and stuff. Me and you and Brian, even when we first started this podcast back in January, late January, it's just like Sons of, we talk about, and then freaking infinities on infinities, and then different size infinities. It all makes sense, because it's all relevant to what we're finding out, what we're learning.
Yeah, it's a good point. Man, I've said this to you, I feel like several times in the past couple of weeks, but for me personally, as far as religion goes, like the only thing that, or not the only thing, but the main thing rather, only is a terrible word to use for this, not at all accurate. The main thing that keeps me like clinging to the thought of religion and the thought of there being an ultimate deity controlling everything, or maybe not controlling, but just kind of in creation of everything, that carries that responsibility for the creation of everything, is the fact that, like, as far as we know, we're the only ones in this vast amount of space that we've discovered. We haven't discovered any life through it at the moment. Says like, what are the odds that we're here on a rock floating in the middle of nowhere in like space and infinite space, and then like with millions, billions of species on the Earth that could have like not that they don't have rational thought, but actual like introspective thinking like the way we do. Like it's what are the odds? It just blows my mind.
Well, here, so Moyer says, can you imagine that somewhere else other creatures can be sitting, investing their transient journey with the kind of significance that our myths and great stories do? Now he's talking about like the myths that we have here. Can somebody else in another universe be doing that, right? So Campbell says, no. When you realize that if the temperature goes up 50 degrees and stays there, life will not exist on this earth, and that if it drops, let's say another 100 degrees and stays there, life will not be on this earth. When you realize how very delicate this balance is, how the quantity of water is so important, well, when you think of all the accidents of the environment that have fostered life, how can you think that the life we know would exist on any other particle of the universe, no matter how many of these satellites around stars there may be?
So he's saying there's just zero possibility, like with all the millions and millions of chances and accidents, like okay, better one, better two, and then the nature takes its course and it either goes one or two, and then out of all the times that that's happened, it's fostered a perfect environment for our lives here on this planet. Okay,
and I think he might even also human life, but I think he might also mean like just biological life and period, like bacteria and stuff too. I think, I don't know. That may be digging too deep into the weeds, maybe, probably, but it's just something that crossed my mind that it might be. He might mean just being, being a being, even to the smallest particle.
That's interesting, being that like especially now that like they're starting to find Earth-like planets, and how like it wasn't that long ago they just discovered like what is it like in some other solar system, and 3 of these planets were in the Goldilocks zone.
Yes. Yeah,
So
that was like within like a month or two ago.
Yeah, it was pretty recent. Yeah. I don't know, see what happens, but either way, I mean, I don't know. Like friend I've been talking to about it, like she's of the opinion like there's just like it's maybe not so much that it exists or don't like other life exists somewhere that it doesn't, but like what does it matter if we're here?
Yeah.
And if it's so far away from us and we can't attain it either way? Like all that matters is the reality that's in front of you now, which I'm sure you would take to with the, with stoicism.
Yes. Yeah, I would say that's and man, and I had a hard time. Okay, I guess Friday was my peak of that of being so far away from my day to day. Where like let's just say for the past 100 days, I have been so in tuned to like today, right now, and for Friday, it just screwed up my mind. Just screwed up my thought process for the day. 24 hours. I won't say it was miserable, but it was miserable. It just so against what I try to do and what I, while you want to have macro goals, and I've mentioned this, you want to have macro goals, but you need to do something, just one thing every day. Tim Ferriss talks about, simplify your goal to one thing that you can check off on your list, and if you feel accomplished, do that. Then tomorrow check off another one, and that goes back to living day to day and everything. But man.
You're allowed to be human.
Yeah, right, and that's I think now more than before. This is even before maybe 3 months ago, where I started catching myself being okay. Like, hey, it got a little bit too robotic. I started seeing that. It took me like a little bit. It gave me I had a little delay, but I started seeing it. I'm like, okay, and one thing that helped me, the seed that was planted late last year, was when I had my cousin last summer. I mentioned this where I just beat him to the ground. We just worked and it worked, and I had him lose. He lost like 25, 30 pounds in 2 months. Like we just burned through, bro. I burned him out, but I burned him out for me. But when he got on the field, he was good to go. So that was the macro goal. That's what I wanted, anyways. But at one point, and my mom told me this. This was when we didn't have my cousin with us, but that she had a conversation with him, and she said, why don't you? Oh, you need to respect Andy, and he's like, well, he doesn't respect me.
Interesting.
Right, and so from that moment, this was like Thanksgiving, Christmas. This was months ago. From that moment, I said, okay, let me check something. There's, I don't want him to be scared of me. I don't want him to, uh, I don't want him to think I'm a dictator either. But there needs to be an agreement, for both, and now I think now I've learned to flank better. Not that I wasn't trying to before, but I obviously wasn't doing a good job. If he's saying, well, he needs to, I'd like him to respect me too, which is reasonable. Because now what I talk about, I talk about these kids that get disrespected by parents and by adults, and so, but coming up with that idea has stemmed from me. Me getting that feedback from my mom that stemmed from my cousin. That I was like, oh shit, this isn't right. This isn't good. This isn't healthy either. It's not healthy for him. Trying to develop him, and get him on at least a good path. To just get him through high school and see where he wants to go, because he seems to be opening up with options. From football to then military and in college too. He asked me about ROTC and how that worked. I'm like, well, you get commission. You go to school for that, and then you get commission, and you work your way up.
Mm-hmm.
So, anyways, but yeah, it stemmed from that. The self. And we've talked about this before too. It's the self. Self-awareness. And one thing I posted last night before going to the baseball game. I believe it was before the baseball game. There's this video that I posted on Facebook, and it's this guy leaves like $100 bill under a homeless man's backpack, and this homeless man's asleep, so he's like there, and he could have felt it, but he didn't. And the guy just like slips it there. So then, like let's just say like 20 minutes later, or whatever, the guy wakes up and he comes to, and he has like $100 bill. He's like, oh my god, he was crying, like he was just ecstatic, right? So he goes to the local Target, like he walks in, there's a Target store, and you see him walk out like 20 minutes later. It says 20 minutes later, and he has 2 bags. So then he goes back to, essentially, it's on a bench. I'm guessing that's where he lives, on the bench, right there on the side of the street. So then this guy, who turns out to be an actor, he's on his phone. He's like, oh man, like, I don't have enough money. Like, I don't know how I'm going to get this medicine for my daughter. I don't know. It's like, I'll talk to you later. I don't know. I need to figure this out. So he's there. He's just contemplating out loud. So then the homeless guy, he says, hey man, you're right? Like, you're right? And then yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to get this money. I need some money from my daughter. She needs her medicine. It's very important. And he's like, hey, you know what? He's like, can you watch my backpack for a little bit? So he goes and he returns the money, and he gives this money to the guy. So then the guy's like, oh my god, you're the best. He's like, here's $500 more. And the homeless guy just was over himself. Like, he just could not believe. He's like, what? Like, he's like, yeah. He's like, and this guy, and this is an interesting business side note concept, but I'll go to that later. But he's like, yeah, I make videos like these for them to go viral, so we can spread, goodness and kindness. Mm-hmm. And with the money he makes off those viral videos, well, he's able to then continue making these videos and giving money away.
Man, that's some like social entrepreneurship, like in a really unique form.
Yes.
Very unique form of social entrepreneurship, almost.
Yeah. And then, this video had over, I think it was like 300,000 views, and that's not even like full viral. It will be more viral later, but I shared it, and by the time I shared it, I think like over 300,000 views. So let me do the math real quick. Because I just signed up for my vlog and stuff. Like, after you get 10,000 views, you're able to monetize through ads. What I like about it is that you can put skip ads, so like you don't have to watch the ads. They're not mandatory ads. They're just ads for the ad's sake, for the people paying for the ads, and the company's paying for the ads, right? So with that, you get 55% of the revenue from the ads.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So even if you... So it's 10,000 views, 55%. So let's say it was 300,000 views, right? Let's say 200... So the 10,000 views not counting. So there's 290,000 views, right? And then let's say, man, dude, even... You think they would give $1 per?
We can just assume it for now.
You want to just go with $1? Okay, so let's assume $1 for 290,000 views. That's $290,000 times 55%. That's $159,000. Like, that's not bad. Let's assume, So, given that number, it's probably like 50 cents. Even if it's 50 cents, bro. So, you cut that in half times 0.5. That's still $79,000 at 50 cents. Let's assume, let's assume that math is correct. Like, that is crazy. And that just allows this particular entrepreneur to continue to go meet homeless people to give them money.
It's pretty nuts. I just had to check right now on YouTube if one of my videos is over 10,000. One of them is over 10,000. It's time to start cashing in.
Yeah, dude. And I can help you do this actually probably after we're done with the podcast, or I can just walk you through it. It's not hard at all. You basically set an account through the third party that YouTube has, and because you're over 10,000 views, everything after that you'll start monetizing that. And so I started doing that because of the vlog, and I only do that because what I want to do with the vlog, and I know it's gonna take time. Because even like Gary Vee and them, like they did, 100 episodes, 1,000, they did a ton of work to lead to where they're at now. So because I have that mindset, I'm not worried about getting even 100 views per video right now. I'm just trying to put on content for now. So what I want to do with that money when that comes in is, one, then I can allow the podcast to start paying for itself. Because right now I pay for it. It's not a lot of money, but still, having that bill paid for, that would just automate that. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about it. And then my biggest thing, that my macro goal for the podcast, the money's from the podcast. The podcast itself, I want, at least, if not all the millennials, if the 25-year-olds listening to this can buckle down and understand where we sit, and we shouldn't be then the bullies to the next generation, is continue learning and teaching teaching the next generation, right? But with the monies, I want to get into funding, or maybe I don't want to go as far as say create my own foundation, but something along those lines of collecting monies for education for kids. And I don't have any specifics, but that's my macro goal for what I want from the revenues of the podcast. And the podcast, that comes directly from the vlogs. I'm just now starting to upload the audio from the podcast to YouTube, so hopefully that'll just help more. Because I know like Denver uses YouTube a lot, and my cousin uses YouTube a lot. So for those of you that, if you're listening to this, obviously you're gonna be listening to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. But if you have friends that prefer YouTube, it's on YouTube now. Like, even if it's just one episode, like for me, it does not matter. I just hope that you get, like I said this in the beginning, getting one thing, that 99%, that 1% a day, that 1% a day, and trying to get better every day. If I can bring you that 1%, that something that maybe you didn't think about, or if Eddie can say something, or Brian when he's here, if we can give you that 1% of anything that you saw, maybe it's something that we thought was just kind of minimal, and like you got the most out of that one thing, that's great. But I know for the macro goal of this stuff, and this has been like maybe 2 months of thinking over like what, because this was something you brought up even recently, and I think about what I want for the podcast and the value and whatnot, and that's a great question, because leading up to that, I'd already been thinking about education, because I see it so important. So that honestly, I don't even remember how I got into this tangent, but
I don't know. We go.
But it stemmed from the social entrepreneur. We were talking about that video and how that came into play,
right.
And so going back to that, it's now the business side of that. It's interesting, like stuff like that. And I don't know if you've seen this video. Were you the one that sent the guy who waits in line?
Yes.
So that video, that's so good. Like, damn,
it's genius, right?
Dude, it's so simple.
Good for him.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
He went and like hired people. He like created jobs.
It's a business. Bro.
Yeah, it's a full-on business.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it's awesome. So for anybody listening that maybe has no clue with like the shitty amount of context we just threw in that.
Yeah.
So this guy, I found this video of this dude who started a business just like waiting in lines for people in, I believe, New York City, right? Is that correct? New York City?
Yes.
So this guy just like, when you don't want to wait in line for the new iPhone, he like takes orders to go stand in line for you. And then I think he charges by the hour. So he has like a flat rate for the first 2 hours. And I think after that, it's like a little more like additional add-ons or whatever.
Yeah.
And then now he's like hiring other people too. And then there's like a whole like, I'm guessing like just the way people, purchase this service. I don't even know like how to label it in one word.
Yeah.
But
Well, because he even goes as far as like if you're flying in for like a show, like the one he keys on is like Hamilton.
oh
Like, if
yeah.
he works at Hamilton, like people fly in to watch like that show, and like I think he may mean that like those are some of his primary like customers, like people that fly into town, tourists that fly in, like hey, they now know about the service, like hey, we're gonna be at the show. Crazy thing about the Hamilton, I believe, is that if you buy tickets you have to like buy a ticket for yourself. So he's seen like Hamilton like 8 times or something. Like that's just him. That doesn't count like his employees that work for him that have also seen Hamilton multiple times because they have to buy an extra. They have to buy a ticket. They have to buy a ticket. Not
That's
just
hilarious. They can't just be waiting.
Yeah, no.
See, like it's
for that
such a.
specific show.
To me, anyway, as far as I know, it's like such a new market. Like it's not really been a thing. I don't think, not that I've heard of to this extent. But it's such a disruptive idea that like it's going to be very easy for businesses to like shut him down. As far as like let's say like Hamilton or Apple, if he's like waiting in line for someone who's getting the new iPhone 7 or iPhone 8 or whatever the hell it's going to be now.
He's done those too, like that. He talked
Yeah.
about doing the Apple.
Like all it's going to take is for Apple to say, you know what, you can't do that. We're not going to let you hold spots for other people in line. And if you do, both of you are going to the back of the line. And that's it. His business is done. Ruined. That's it.
Yeah, you're not wrong. I wonder though, because the take may be that, well, that's one more person that's gonna buy a phone, but that's only one, so they might be okay with doing away with one. But that'll be interesting. Okay, it'll be interesting to see what it turns into, given that scenario. Because I don't disagree. That's something that it didn't quite cross my mind. Something similar, but that specifically, where like, hey, you can't be waiting in line for somebody and just jump ship after that.
Yeah, Shark Tank the hell out of it. And my thoughts.
Your thoughts?
What else you got for us in this book?
All right, let's see. Let me go back so I don't want to skip. So one thing Moyers asked, he says, "Do you see some new metaphors emerging in a modern medium for the old universal truths?" Campbell replies, "I see the possibility of new metaphors, but I don't see that they have become mythological yet." What I got out of that was that, which it's redundant, but we're smack in the middle of something changing, bro. Like, I hate to reiterate or be redundant about that, but it blows my mind that we, as human beings, us 25-year-olds, we are smack in the middle of millennials to Gen Z. And then, as a society, as a human race, we are smack in the middle of transition. This was written in 1988, and they were in transition then. I say the same thing for 2017. Like, I don't know what more to say. Then it blows my mind.
I feel like that's just the way the world is. Though, like it's just always in constant transition, constant change, with everything going on. Like, imagine what it would have been like if we were 25 and then World War II just started.
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
that kind of
crazy.
transition.
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
getting out of World War II, going into the Cold War, that kind of transition. Or, I feel like I keep leaning on war like it's this big thing.
Well, because
But
you got.
there's always a lot of it, that's for sure.
I was gonna say, I'm like, the way maybe you can think about it is, wars have been a big part of every generation.
That's true.
So you go to World War II, then you have Cold War, then you have is it Korea, then Vietnam?
Well, whichever way it all happened right after.
So all of that. So Korea, Vietnam, then you have like the late 80s. Then you have the dry years technically. After the Persian Gulf, you had some dry years, maybe like 10 years up until 2011. Or sorry, 2001, 9/11.
Well, we had that quick Operation Desert Storm.
Yeah, that early 90s.
Which kind
Early
of
90s.
like I guess kind of bled over into the 2001 9/11
Right.
conflict.
Yeah.
Well, not really, because that was done by terrorists, and then for whatever reason we went after Saddam Hussein.
Right. Yeah.
So it's
yeah.
just kind of a continuation of what the other Bush did.
Right. And that's interesting because the only reason why I say like I guess the dry years would be maybe from like 94 to 2000 is only because like Jock on them, like they call those dry years. They were in the military. And yeah, they were doing missions, but it wasn't a war per se. That makes sense. Like that one, the Gulf War and all, like that was like late 80s into like 91, 92. And then from there, when Jocko got in, he talked about like going to Guam, like different places. I think Portugal, and going, like I said, going on missions, going on tours. They were on boats and whatnot, on ships, but they still consider them dry years up into 2001, where that was the next war as big as Vietnam, as big as World War II.
Fair enough. Well, then now we have the new Trump presidency, and with all the with the mother of all bombs being dropped, and then what else did we do? We did something. Just a whole bunch of like 30 some other bombs unleashed on like Syrian government.
It was 50. I think it's 50. Yeah.
That's something I feel like this country has not done in a very long time. Probably not since Bush.
Yeah. What's interesting is that week that the Moab got dropped, and then those other bombs got dropped. Since then, it seems like it's kind of cooled down.
Yeah.
Which is not a bad thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I've just noticed that. I don't know what it means. Because the way I think about it, in a sense, is like it gets so damn blistering hot here, and then we get a cool front on Sunday. Like you get this like heat, and then just like change. It's like, oh shit, like what's gonna happen next? What?
Man, I don't know if I want to.
The next thing.
I don't know if I want to go off the rails on this one. We can always edit it out, I guess. But okay, so Trump's first 100 days in office are wrapping up, and the big headline is his quote, him saying, I thought it would be much easier than it is, or whatever it is,
Yeah.
Whatever it is that he said about it, about him thinking it was going to be easier.
Yeah.
Like, and people are like all up in arms about that. Like, people are pissed off about it.
Yeah.
And I'm just kind of from the perspective of like, well, with him being the obvious narcissist that he is, I think it's a good thing that he admits that openly. I think that's a vast improvement.
I was gonna say I hope people consider that, because that goes back to the ego check, that being humble. He realized, hey, this being the president of the United States is not running a business per se.
Yeah.
There's a lot of functions that they do the same thing, but it's not the same, and it takes way longer to make an impact. And for me, that goes back to our history teacher back in high school. It says it takes years to see what the current president's effects are going to be.
Yeah, it's going to be a minute. It'll definitely be a minute.
Here, so Moyers says, going back to the book, what do you think will be the myths that will incorporate the machine into the new world? Campbell replies, well, automobiles have gotten into mythology. They have gotten into dreams, and airplanes are very much in the service of the imagination. The flight of the airplane, for example, is in the imagination as the release from Earth. This is the same thing that birds symbolize in a certain way. The bird is symbolic of the release of the spirit from bondage to the earth, just as the serpent is symbolic of the bondage to the earth. The airplane plays that role now. And I only play that because like just transitioning into the new whatever we're leading to now, the route, and then what you mentioned, and
Yeah, well, I think what we're leading to now is AI. I mean, that's what it all seems to be going towards, is AI. And then not only that, but the whole, if anyone's ever seen the movie Transcendence with Johnny Depp, inserting yourself into AI. I mean, again, it's like it seems to me like the never-ending chase for immortality. That's what it feels like we're always trying to constantly beat, whether we're chasing it through, going to the gym every day so we can live a little bit longer, eating healthy so we can live a little bit longer. We're just always chasing that just extra little valued time of life we'd wish to have.
Yeah.
And well, inserting yourself into AI, it makes sense because we're under the impression at this point that if we're able to accomplish that, you're going to live forever.
Yeah, essentially. I know, and speaking of health, real quick, like even Dr. Rhonda Patrick, she's literally what I'd call is the human guinea pig for humans as far as life extension, because she's trying like the kale. She's learned about the kale thing, the blueberry, which I've jumped on all that stuff too. Like I'm drinking blueberry concentrate like straight like every day. I eat a little bit every day. Even right now I have some blueberry concentrate with water and then Jocko tea. I'm just doing it all as well, and I'm eating a bunch of kale every day, and then other juices I'm drinking. Anyways, but like her podcast, which is I believe it's titled "Found My Fitness." I believe that's what it's called. Either way, I have her on my Instagram. If you want to find it, you can just type in Dr. Rhonda Patrick. But the majority of her podcasts are with researchers that have to do with like cell extension and biological extension. So everything you're talking about, like the health version of that.
So here we go. You ready for this? here's my thoughts. So, if we're chasing immortality all the time, and you may not even be chasing it through trying to have better health, going to the gym, or eating right, or doing things to make sure that you're going to live a longer life as long as you possibly can. For a lot of people, they're chasing immortality through what? Through what you're reading right there, the power of myth, through religion. That is just about in every religion. Like, correct me if I'm wrong. Like, I'm pretty sure every religion that exists in the world has that promise of eternal life. That's the main thing. That's its main ploy, right?
Yeah.
That's the promise. You do these things, you follow these rules, you get eternal life. That's what everyone wants. Everyone wants that immortality. So my question is, if you take away all of that, are you still going to, like, would you, if there was no such thing as immortality, if there was no such thing as, I'm not going to say no such thing as religion because that's a man-made thing, right? But if there was no actual deity in control of all of this, and it was just, nothing, like we live and we die and that's it and that's all it was, would you be content with that? And I mean you, not like Walker, but I mean just anyone listening, would you be content with that?
Mm-hmm. And not the answer, but one of the possibilities is stoicism, because that is the day-to-day type deal. So that it's not my answer, but it's the first thing I thought about. It's like, are you content with today? Can you maximize your day today? Can you do the most you can today to get, to gain happiness, to gain fulfillment? Well, for people who are continuing to listen, I had a brief interruption, and we were on a stride, and we're gonna keep going.
Onward we go. So, what I was saying is, listener, if you learned that there's no such thing as a God, there's no such thing as a deity, just nothing exists, we're here by chance, it just so happened this way, would you be content with that? And how would you go about living your life, knowing that you're immortal, you're going to die, and nothing's going to happen after that? That's I feel like that's like I'm being super nihilistic right now.
Well, yeah.
But,
even so, it's interesting because I know in my mindset now, I would just keep going because because legacy's still part of the deal.
Yeah.
And even one thing that came up in the book was that and I think Bill Moyers brought up was John Wayne. John Wayne being a mythological figure, or even in the 80s, he was already saying yes. Like John Wayne's like, it wasn't even that long ago, but so I get that. That's maybe what I would also say is like, well, you can still like do good, and given that all variables were the same, only the religion or only the god or deity, sorry, if only that variable is different, and everything else remains the same, at least for me, and I hope listeners would still continue, building on what their mission is, whatever the mission is.
There's still purpose that you can have to your life regardless of religion or not, right?
Yep. Here's something that Joseph Campbell says. He says, certainly Star Wars has a valid mythological perspective. It shows the state as a machine and asks, is the machine going to crush humanity or serve humanity? Humanity comes not from the machine, but from the heart. What I see in Star Wars is the same problem that Faust gives us. What the heck? Can you read here?
Blooper.
Yeah, here. No, I'm gonna leave this in. But can you read something?
Mephistopheles.
Okay, we'll go Mephistopheles.
Right.
So Mephistopheles, the machine man, can provide us with all the means and is thus likely to determine the aims of life as well. But of course, the characteristic of Faust, which makes him eligible to be saved, is that he seeks aims that are not those of the machine. Now, when Luke Skywalker unmasks his father, he is taking off the machine role that the father has played. The father was the uniform. That is power, the state role. And I still kind of tie that. I was hoping I was going to tie it a little better, but it still kind of goes back to, that ultimate, I guess, that high figure. In this case, where it was like Darth Vader. He's that high figure, and when Luke, the human, realizes like, oh, it still kind of ties in mythological wise. You know, if we're talking deity to man, you know, mortal, you know, immortal versus mortal.
Yeah.
Interesting. Oh man, that's so good. I hope listeners eventually get back to us. I rarely get feedback over email or anything, and I hope we with questions like this, like that's a very good question. Is like, can you as an individual human being continue living, maximizing your life, trying to learn or wanting to uh, better or be a part of a better society. You know, wanting to be a part of a better society. If you can you do that knowing that there is no afterlife. Very interesting. I like that. I like that question. It's very good.
Man, does it even make a difference if there is an afterlife or not? If there is that promise or not of immortality in heaven or hell or whichever way you look at it? Like,
Yeah.
does it really affect the way you can view things on Earth as far as like purpose?
Right. Absolutely. And I know. I mean, I would just give my. I mean, it's not exactly a brief answer, but for me, it's, and I don't know how this is gonna sound to everybody else, including you, Eddie. But like, I'm very comfortable with death. Like, it's not like.
Same.
I mean, you know, it's rational to be okay. I think it's well, from my rationalization, it's like okay, that's gonna happen. When I don't know, but it doesn't matter right now.
Yeah.
You know, like I am trying to be healthy. I am trying to do all these things. You know, stuff I've already talked about on this podcast. But you know, in general, you know, that's my short answer. I do want, I do wish, I do hope that people will get back to us with their answer with this, because I'm just curious on feedback, and maybe they'll in turn ask a question back, which would be great. You know, we can ponder on that question. But I think that's a solid question that hopefully, even if you don't reply to us or send us feedback, if you can be honest with yourself, you know, be honest with your self evaluation. I talked about that. I actually texted Eddie. What was it that I texted you? I said, you know, oh, the that PDF file from your professor.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
And what I've read so far, I'm not gonna go into any details, but the only thing that I had told you was like, you know, self reflection. That's the first thing I got, and I've only read like 15 pages. Like, it's not that much, and and that's what I got. It's like self reflection, something like that. A question that deep, that uh, it's not rhetorical for me because I have an answer, but for those, if it's rhetorical for you right now, you know, be honest with yourself and check that. You know, like my cousin with me, you know, wanting respect back. It's like, what? That's legit. I think that, you know, as human beings trying to interact and build something bigger than ourselves, it's like, yeah, like I need to check myself and see how I'm approaching this situation with my cousin. You know, just do it better. You know, do it to where he's on board. And now, I mean, now he's on board, but the point is, you know, being on board and just working towards that macro goal.
Yeah. Just for the sake of clarification, I'm not proposing atheism in any way. People, do what you're gonna do. I'm gonna
Yeah.
do what I'm gonna do.
Right. Yeah.
As far as believing in what we all choose to believe in.
Yep. Yep. I couldn't agree more than that, because it's like I feel like religion rarely comes up, and I think maybe we were due for this conversation. You know, it might have been due, because we've talked politics, we've talked health, you know, we've talked music, we've talked business, we talked finance, economics, but the religion aspect. Not that we've left it out, but it's just never. It just hasn't arisen. You know, it just hasn't risen to conversation the way it has today, and you know, and even me leading to like, okay, what book do I want to derive from? Like Power of Myth. Let's do it. You know, and let's just go from there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So Campbell says Eisenhower went into a room full of computers, and he put the question to these machines: is there a God? And they all start up, and the lights flash, and the wheels turn, and after a while, a voice says, "Now there is." Moyers then replies, "But isn't it possible to develop toward your computer the same attitude of the chieftain who said that all things speak of God? If it isn't a special privileged revelation, God is everywhere in his work, including the computer." Campbell replies, "Indeed so, it's a miracle what happens on that screen. Have you ever looked inside one of those things?" "No, and I don't intend to." Campbell then replies to that. He says, "You can't believe it. It's a whole hierarchy of angels, all on slats. And those little tubes, those are miracles. I have had a revelation from my computer about mythology. You buy certain software, and there is a whole set of signals that lead to the achievement of your aim. If you begin fooling around with signals that belong to another system of software, they just won't work. Similarly, in mythology, if you have a mythology in which the metaphor for the mystery is the Father, you're going to have a different set of signals from what you would have if the metaphor for the wisdom and mystery of the world were from the Mother. And he goes into a whole like another paragraph like about that stuff, but still, the beginning, now there is, it's like, well, if you believe, then it must be true.
Yeah.
And it's something that me and Brian actually talked about. What day? I think might have been Friday. We briefly talked about, you believe in something so hard, or if you believe in it hard enough, and then your subconscious leads you to working towards that goal, then it must come true, or more than likely it will come true. And that's kind of like this, now there is. So if you believe it hard enough and you build on it, because I believe there has to be action. And I believe there has to be action. And even he says, like, when Joseph says he works with his computer and he sees all these angels and things working in cohesion. Is that a word?
Sure.
Yeah. So still, it must be true.
Fair enough. Man, the human imagination is a really like powerful thing. I don't know why that just hit me right now. Like in my thought process, we were going through that, but the human imagination is a really, really, really powerful tool.
Yeah,
it's pretty nuts. Like just thinking about it, like we needed a big bomb to take out like a city in Japan. How are we gonna do it? Imagine a way we could do it, and then like that imagination just forms from. Forms into actual rational thoughts from knowledge and application of the knowledge, and then it happens.
Yep.
It's just like a scary thing. And even like imagination in the sense of like how we've come about all these myths and all these religions and such. And I don't mean like to say like we're playing pretend or we're like imagining something that doesn't exist. It's not what I'm saying. I'm just like, I'll just like offer you the basic notion of praying. Like, so when like you pray and you're talking to your God, like, what voice do you use? Like, if you, like, imagine God talking back to you, what voice are you hearing it in? It's like the imagination process of everything just really baffles me at the moment.
That's it. I never thought about what voice do you hear it
in
reply. That's interesting. I'm going to have to pay attention now, because I know I definitely feel like there's something there. I just never paid attention to that particular voice coming back. I know there's a voice there, and I listen to the words, but I don't pay attention to the tone or to the... I like that. That might even be a part of like meditation too. Like, when you're meditating and I know when I meditate, if I do get something like that, lately it feels like, let's say I see you in my meditation state, right? Usually I hear you in your voice, so like stuff like that. Usually it's pretty connected, like as far as that goes. It doesn't astray. Like I don't see you and hear somebody else's voice or something else's voice. I don't. So that's interesting in maybe a dream state or a prayer state. What would that reply sound like?
Yeah.
Like that. I'm gonna stop Power Myth because now he's just venturing into how various religions tie in to the ultimate thought, of mythology. So I'll bring it up again later on, maybe another podcast. But for now, definitely. As I was like skimming through, like, yeah, we're about done with that book at least.
A lot of thoughts.
Yeah. Even with a little bit that I've read, and with the ultimate question that you brought up, it's like, dang, okay, like that's a lot to think about. It's a lot to think about. It's big. That's a big monkey brain.
Yeah.
On its own.
Man, I had a older student of mine, adult student, adult age, like young 30s probably. And he was like showing me these screenshots of like, I guess, a social media argument he engaged in with somebody about the Bible. And he starts, pointing out all these flaws in the Bible and whatever. And he's like, how can you like believe a book that has like all these flaws and contradictions within it? And I didn't really respond back to him. I didn't really give him the time of day. I was like, okay, you want to brag to me about how smart you are and like how you try to outsmart everybody else on social media? Congratulations. I don't know what to tell you.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to give you the time of day for that. I just think anyone that does that is just not worthy of attention. But with all that being said, the Bible, though it may have very apparent contradictions, I think within it lies a lot of good values that you can take away from and apply to life now, and it parallels all the way across generation to generation to generation.
Right.
And then, the other thought that occurred in my head as he was kind of bragging about this to me, like putting down the Bible, is like, would you be okay doing the same to the Quran? Like, would you do it for the Quran? I'm sure there's flaws in the Quran. There's got to be. Mm-hmm. Any book that has, like, thousands of contributors to it over thousands of years, is bound to have some kind of flaw to it.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, even Power of Myth, throughout the book, it talks about how there's a lot of parallels between the different books. And, oh, man, what was I going to say? Sorry. I got an itch and I forgot.
Well, it's like we build up these myths, and the Bible is a man-made book. I mean, granted, I totally see the point where Christianity says that I'm forgetting the exact vocabulary word, and I took Bible classes like in college.
Okay.
But where like God comes down and speaks His words through other people. Like He uses people as a medium to transfer these words into the Bible, right?
Right.
To allow them to get these thoughts down in the way He wants to articulate them. So I totally get that's the thing for Christianity, but cannot forget this is like man-made stuff. Like myth is a man-made thing.
Right. Interesting enough, when I was taking those, when I was going to those Monday classes for my cousin's communion, they were doing like a evangelist for like the godparents and stuff, and I would go to those. And when I finally started getting comfortable, which was very late in the program, like we're done with the program now, so it's over. But I say like the last 3 weeks that I went, like I felt like I was just more contributive. I had more value to. I was comfortable releasing what I thought, right? And one of them was like kind of that, and I said, so the Bible is truthful, but also mythological.
Yeah.
And because the father's the one giving these classes, and he's like yeah, and I was like, oh, thank God someone gets it, like, because the thing is, like, it's not that I get it, but after reading The Power of Myth, it just opened up door that gave me a sense of like, okay, like the Bible is also a tool that you can use.
Yeah.
And what I was gonna say a little bit earlier was those contradictions. What if they're dichotomies? What if they're intended to be contradictive? Because you have to think about the good and the bad. One thing that my cousin brought up, he's like, and I don't know, was it you? Either way, you'll know. He said, "Who said the devil was bad? He just went his own way."
Yeah.
Did you say that?
No.
Okay.
Well, it's something like that loosely. Okay. It's something that my brother brought up to me.
Okay.
Actually,
it probably was you then.
It was kind of as a joke one day, but it makes you think a little bit.
Yeah.
Loosely quoted, It goes something like, "If the devil is such a bad guy, why does he only punish bad guys in hell? Doesn't that make him a good guy?"
Right.
So it's just food for thought. Think about it.
And one thing, I forgot about this.
Well, maybe it's not so much that he's doing punishing. I think punishing is the wrong verb. I think he's just getting joy out of the pain he causes people.
Yeah, he gets a pleasure out. He gets a pleasure out of it. But interesting enough that I'm gonna now re-listen to again was something that Denver sent me a long time ago when we first started these rehearsals. Conversation with the Devil. I don't know if you ever listened to it.
Oh yeah, with Ray Wiley Hubbard, the Conversation with the Devil, the song. Is that what you're talking about? No, you're not. Oh, my bad.
No, not the song. No, it's a legit like 4-hour conversation, and there's I would say the narrator, and then he portrays the devil. He's replying, so it's a question and answer type deal. And they go through these questions. And honestly, like, I'm not even going to go into the details because I don't remember them clearly anymore because this was last year.
My memory's getting jogged. I think I know what you're talking about.
And Denver showed me this. And, one time I even told my mom, like, Mom, you should listen to this. And she's like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, okay, I get it. I completely get it because the devil's always seen as a negative, a bad person. Okay. But pondering that and now remembering that particular conversation with the devil, it's like... it just opens up a whole nother like realm of things, and going back to the original is like what if they're just dichotomies to put you in a good or bad decision making situation.
Well, and speaking of dichotomies, the devil and God is the biggest dichotomy that we cannot live without. We need that dichotomy. Right. If there is no devil, there's no God. There's none of that. If there's no God, there's no devil. Like they have to coexist in order for this to be a thing worthwhile, right? You can't have bad without good, because then just good, and we can't define what good is without bad.
Exactly.
You need the dichotomy.
Right? Yeah, you need the dichotomy.
It's like always going back to Ryan Adams, but like his title track for his latest album, Prisoner. So the song Prisoner. That one line, again, loosely quoted, I'm probably not going to get it word for word, but, there's this one bird that, is sitting outside his prison cell window or whatever, and he says, how can something born with wings ever really know what it truly means to be free? Or something along those lines. So it's like, yeah, it's been free all of his life. Like, he doesn't know the definition of free. Lives it.
Yeah.
Like,
Interesting enough. So there's this, speaking of free, and it's kind of like leaving the religion talk, but I had heard, I just recently found Hidden Brain by NPR. This was maybe like 3 weeks ago. Episode 38 is titled Me, Me, Me. Talks about narcissism and like millennials and certain, even phrasing, like if you use it enough, you believe it. I mean, it's like saying you tell yourself a lie, you tell yourself a lie until you believe it. It's kind of like along those lines.
okay.
And one of the things they brought up was like self-esteem. The thing is with our generation, and I feel like this is quite true for me. And I think this is why I've now ventured into things outside music. Is when you get that approval, then you feel like you're okay. And that goes back. If you have, and this, and it's an interesting thing because Gary Vee says we need to double down on good self-esteem, which is total dichotomy to what this hidden brain thing is bringing up. Oh, this Dr. Jean Twenge. She's the one who gets interviewed for this podcast episode. And the cool thing about Hidden Brain, side note, is that it's like 25 minutes long, bro. They're not long. Nothing's over 40 minutes. It's quick, dense, and it's in your head.
Love it.
So, anyways, but one thing the only point I want to bring up from that podcast today is the self-esteem thing. And I see it in my cousin. He sees he sees his heroes on YouTube, and he feels good about it. So then he doesn't work. And it makes sense to me. It makes sense at least, and it's like, man, and interesting enough, and this is a self-reflection for himself that he told me yesterday. He's like, man, he's like, I want to accomplish so much, and like I go home and I'm on YouTube, and he knows, like he said, this is him talking, and he's like, you want to accomplish something, and you go out and do it, and I guess he sees it as like because I'm doing music, like he knows that's my career, so it's in a flow state now where we're just rolling. I'm rolling with you, and I like your project, so I'm on board with whatever you want to do. I have no real contradictions. I have maybe I can say my opinion. We can veer off of that or whatever. But the overall mission, I'm on board. So it's flow state. Go, just go. That's fine. But now doing the vlog, now doing the podcast, and I think for him it's a vlog thing because he does watch vlogs and he listens to all these people. Because even Ray Lewis has a podcast.
It's like he's living life through others.
Exactly, and he's okay. But because he's okay with that, and like I said, going back to the NPR podcast, it made sense. I'm like, man, interesting enough. I'm glad he's able to see that on himself. But okay, now what I'm thinking as the adult trying to help him grow, it's like, man, how can I get him to then find something good enough that he wants to work for it? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Something that does capture his attention. And right now, honestly, I'm trying to look for like YouTube jobs for him. Like, I'm like going that deep because it's like, well, he's on YouTube. He can probably maximize that. If someone can stand in line for somebody else, he can maximize YouTube. He can monetize YouTube somehow. There has to be a way to monetize YouTube. And those are my side note mindsets. But that, self-esteem and everything else that stems from that, and you get that satisfaction. Sorry, and it's like, okay, cool. And I think, and I talked about this our last podcast when we were with Alex and Freddie and all them at the island. I talked about when I got that like blessing essentially from my dad about music. Cool, and I continued, but 2 years later, I'm doing a vlog. Now I'm doing a podcast. Now I'm venturing to exercise. I just got my first paying client for myself for health, like for dietary
Very
stuff.
cool.
And that just happened like Friday. Like it happened while we were actually right after the doghouse. Like I was messaging and whatever, and so I just got my first client for that. Like that's a whole new thing that I have to learn. Like and it excites me as much as music excites me. But I wonder, I'm not gonna say yes or no, but like stemming from that original blessing from my dad 3 years ago, saying, hey, you can chase this dream, and now that I have that, okay, then I'm good.
Yeah.
Because then I wonder, and I mentioned, I think I mentioned it more now than ever, is like the parenting thing, stemming from that, your first 12 years of life, and what your parents do or don't do, then you go through your adolescence, which that's where you're in your more rebellious stage, and then you finally grow up after college. After college, you kind of grow up. For the most part, this isn't everybody. Still know a lot of kids out there our age that are still kids, but it's fine. Either way, but even them being kids usually stems because of their upbringing. So I've made all those parallels, and it's a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a big old monkey brain that I'm letting it sit, but it's fascinating to me because it goes back to the being a human being,
The human condition.
Yeah, the human condition, exactly. And it's like, man, it's so cool, and it's like so many answers that are gonna be answered like soon, not yet, but all that stuff. It's like, okay, cool.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna call it there. We hit the ground running today.
We did.
And I'm like I said, and I said at the beginning, I'm glad it did because like of my mindset. What I told you since building up to the week and my Friday just being not optimal, not my definition of optimal, and right now we hit the ground running. So it's still I feel like an hour and 20 minutes of like boom solid material. So we'll be good for today. Eddie, if you could please leave your social media accounts.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you can find me on Facebook, Eddie Signs. My profile picture is like green and blue, and it's like a silhouette of me being on stage. It's supposed to be really artsy, but I can't tell you the link because I don't know it. But EDDIESAENZ, and then Twitter at Eddie Signs 3. Again, EDDIESAENZ, and then the number 3. And then Instagram is that same thing, but it's at Eddie_Signs 3, because you need an underscore in your Instagram. You just need to. It's like an unwritten rule.
Even I have one now.
It's an unwritten rule. You gotta have it.
So, my Instagram is AndyWalker_lead. My Twitter's the same, AndyWalker_lead. My Facebook, I do have the URL. It's the facebook.com/AndyWalkerLead. And then I think my artist page is Andy Walker Leads. Either way, it's all connected. Like on my personal account, I have like the link where you can like click it, Andy Walker, whatever. And even when I share stuff, I always link the two now, so it's all there. Add me on Facebook. Whatever. Message me, I'll answer or reply. That's gonna be it, man. I'm not even gonna leave a quote. I think there's plenty of material from the Power of Myth that I'm gonna re-listen to when I get to it, and we can use. And I will be back. We will be back. Hopefully, full force next week. We'll have Brian. We'll have Brian back here. But Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell, and then the mediator is Bill Moyers. Super good book. I'd say if you have, I don't know if I want to say if you have doubt, but if you have any type of questions about religion and maybe how they tie into your life, I think Power of Myth could help you find at least some answers. You have to read the whole thing to maybe find one answer, but it's definitely a good read. It's enlightening. I learned a ton. It's helped me to this day. That's why I'm still using it today, and I do recommend it. And again, The Power of Myth by Joseph Campbell with Bill Moyers. So we're gonna sign off until next week. We will see what the week brings, and we will come back. Actually, side note, Brian's going on speed dating, so that'll be interesting.
Woo!
And then we had our museum adventure this past Thursday, so we'll talk about that next time when Brian's here, so we can give the full account, and then we'll see what happens. I'm curious about the speed dating thing because I was actually gonna probably go, but it's like rehearsal day. I'm like, no, I'm not gonna be rushing anywhere, so I hate rushing. So
it's an interesting experience. We used to put it on for philanthropy with my fraternity. So yeah, we used to throw a speed dating event. People flock to those things. It does bring in some good people.
Yeah,
brings in good numbers.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna leave it there. We'll come back next week. We'll see you guys.